Hi everyone, my name is Richard Santoro, and I welcome you to Third and Zen, the YouTube channel where every week we're sharing spiritual message to nourish ourselves, heart, mind, body, and soul. First, thanks for stopping by the channel. Thanks for checking out today's video. I do hope this video finds you doing well. I do hope that you're taking the time to care for yourself, heart, mind, body, and soul. And I hope you're remembering that you're worthy of love and care and joy and peace and all of the best things that God and this universe has to offer for us. To that point, as you can see, I'm not coming to us from my normal recording space. I'm here at one of my favorite places, local arboretum, which I've referenced several times in sermons because it's a place that I come to nourish my soul, to nourish my spirit, my heart, my mind, my body, my soul. So it's a beautiful autumn morning, and the sun is out. As you can see, it's crisp. It's just perfect. So I figure while I'm here, I would stop, take a few minutes, and share a message. So let's jump right in. And gonna make a not natural segue. There's no pivot that works in this setting, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And I'm gonna talk to us about Van Halen, the rock band Van Halen. One of my favorite bands of all time. They are on probably my Mount Rushmore of my favorite rock bands of all time. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about that briefly. Now, to be clear, I am talking about the David Lee Roth Van Halen, not the Sammy Hagar Van Halen. That's my particular favorite. If you prefer Sammy Hagar, that's okay. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But Van Halen, let's talk about this for a moment. When I was younger, my best friend, when I met him, was in fourth grade, was a big Van Halen fan, and I wasn't really familiar with them at the time. I still remember it like it was yesterday, going to his house for the first time, and he had this big Van Halen poster on his wall, Diver Down, one of their albums, had a poster of that, and he introduced me to them, and became a huge fan, and to this day I still love Van Halen. And you know, there's something interesting about Van Halen that I discovered not too long ago, and that was what inspired this message. You see, back in the day, when Van Halen was at their zenith, at their peak, when they were becoming the rock legends that they became and that they are, they always had a reputation, because obviously they were one of the biggest, if not the biggest band in the world in the late 70s, early 80s. They were right up there. And you know, their albums and the touring, they tour and they put on these massive shows. And like rock bands or musicians or acts, they gained a reputation of being, I don't know, should we say diva-ish, or a little out there, or a little just whatever. And one of the popular stories about them is that they had it written into their contract, wherever they went on tour, that they were only allowed to be served in their dressing room. There was only allowed to be brown M&Ms. Brown M&Ms only. So they gained this reputation of being, you know, one of these diva-ish type bands with these weird requests, you know, this, hey, you know, we're rock gods and we only want brown M&Ms. And that was what we all always heard about them, you know, because you always hear these stories about Van Halen or Zeppelin or whoever, and, you know, it's that reputation. So let's fast forward now all these years later. In the last year, I watched a YouTube video, a brief clip of an interview with David Lee Roth, the aforementioned former lead singer of Van Halen. And in this interview, he was setting, in this moment, in this clip, he was setting the record straight on the brown M&Ms. And what he said was this. Back particularly around 1984, when their big album, 1984, they were this huge touring band. And he was saying how they were a little bit ahead of the curve on touring equipment. They had a lot of newer, more advanced stuff, and they had a lot of stuff. It was a big tour, big show, as you can imagine. You know, a lot of huge equipment. And what he was saying was that a lot of the venues that they went to were a little bit older. That happens. And they couldn't really handle the equipment, and a lot of it at times would damage unintentionally the venue that they were playing at, you know, whether the stage wasn't secure enough, or the floor, or all these things, or the electrical output and capacity. So because of this, David Lee Roth, a very smart man, all the members of Van Halen, they weren't stupid. And what they had written into their contract, right in the middle of the contract, big contract, you know, when promoters tours. It's not a little contract, big, because they have, obviously, as I've alluded to, a lot of requirements. And what they wrote into the middle section of the contract, the section of what is required in order for them to be able to play there without damaging the location and thus being prone to lawsuits for the damage that might take place if the venue doesn't take the proper steps to, make it suitable for the equipment. So this was all for their own protection, so they wouldn't get sued, and also for the protection of the venue so that they would be properly prepared. In that particular section is where they wrote, and we only want brown M&Ms. We only want brown M&Ms in there. So what would happen is the venues that would, sign them to be, on tour and playing at their location, when David Lee Roth got there, when the band got to the concert venue, if they saw regular M&Ms, just all different M&Ms with not just the brown, if it was just a regular bowl of M&Ms, they would know that the location did not fully read the contract. They would know that the location didn't read the contract and therefore didn't take the proper steps to care for the venue, and therefore any damage that was done to the location wasn't their fault. They would be able to say, you didn't read the contract. And do you want to know how we know? Because in the same place where we said you had to have this kind of security on the stage, it's also where we had the brown M&M stipulation, and you obviously didn't do that. So they were doing that to protect themselves. It was like a little hidden Easter egg in there, a little way for them to know that the contract wasn't fully vetted and read. Now, as David Lee Roth is explaining this, he also said that they gained a reputation as being divas because of the brown M&Ms. But they always made it a point to never correct, interviewers or people who thought that, because they didn't mind the reputation that came along with that. It's like, why would I, change that truth that people talked about? Because it made us seem a little cooler, a little more out there, a little more diva-ish, and there's nothing wrong with that if you're a rock act. It just adds to the mystique, adds to the aura. So, all these years later, he has no problem correcting it. But back then, back in the early 80s, that was their protection clause. If people didn't read the contract properly, they would know it because they would see that they didn't serve only brown M&Ms. Therefore, they didn't see that section. And people always heard, oh, they got brown M&Ms in the contract, that's it. They're rock divas, and they didn't correct that truth. So, why am I talking about all this? Well, obviously, I thought it was a super cool story because I'm a fan, and it's something I always heard for years, the brown M&Ms and Van Halen. But more importantly, it goes to the aspect of truth and myth and facts, most especially truth. For years, David Lee Roth and Van Halen were totally happy to have a falsehood perpetuated as truth because it added to their mystique and their aura. And for a rock band, that's just fun. There is a moment in the Gospel of John, in the 18th chapter of the Gospel of John, after Jesus has been arrested and he is now being questioned and having a conversation with the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. And Pontius Pilate's questioning about all these things that are going on. These Jewish officials and authorities have arrested you. They brought you to me. And there's witnesses coming forth who were giving false testimony. And there is a moment where Pontius Pilate, when talking about, the truth that witnesses are giving, he says, what is truth? What is truth? And that question right there, in addition to the longer Van Halen story, is where I'm going with all this. What is truth? We live in a time and in a society today where what is true is not held as sacred or cared for in such a responsible way. It's almost even cared for in a, I don't even want to compare it to David Lee Roth because that was fun and cheeky. In our society, the way truth is managed and approached is a dangerous way, where we will have politicians say something that they know not to be true, they will give a falsehood, and then that falsehood is repeated, and then that falsehood is covered in the media, and it becomes dangerous. And we live in a society and in a culture and in an atmosphere today where folks only want to believe what they feel is best for their maybe political beliefs or their cultural beliefs or their worldviews. And rather than looking at facts, we don't, as a society and a culture, I shouldn't say we, because it's not everyone, but we have, areas and groups and pockets and individuals that don't seem to manage and care for the truth too well, and it's dangerous. It really is dangerous. So I guess part A of this message, first part that I would like to land a little bit, is Pontius Pilate asks, what is truth? And truth is a valuable and important thing, and it's based on reality, and it's based on fact, and it should be cared for when it is a communal concept of, when we're looking at communal concepts, when we're looking at things that affect the whole. So that's number one, caring for the truth in our society and protecting from lies and falsehoods and untruths, however that we should phrase that. So that's number one. Now, pivoting completely from that, Pontius Pilate asks, what is truth? We all have our own truth in a more healthy way. Now, I don't mean we all have our own facts, and if they're not facts, but we still consider them truth, well, that's just my truth. No, I don't mean that. I mean, I come to the Arboretum because it fills my soul and it nourishes me and it helps me heart, mind, body, and soul. That's my truth. But for you, it's different. You may not enjoy the Arboretum. Maybe for you, it's exercising. Maybe for you, it's reading scripture. Every morning, as soon as you wake up. We all have had our own journeys, our own experiences, our own pain, our own suffering, and it causes within us our own truth. And that is something to be embraced. That is something to be joyful about. And that is something to be protective of. Only you get to speak your truth. Only you get to own your truth. Nobody else gets to tell you your truth. If you were in a damaging relationship or family unit or workplace and it affected you in a certain way and you feel pain and suffering over that and you need care for it, that's your truth, and nobody else gets to gaslight you and say, no, or no. So, if what brings you joy is this, and that, that's your truth. Embrace that. So, for me, my truth is come to the Arboretum. My truth is my family unit. My truth is my relationship with God and with Jesus in a way that it unfolds and has unfolded for me. For you, it might be different. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is, on a societal and communal level, we do have an issue with the truth. And it's dangerous, and it is to be pushed back against. And we need to find a way for society to unfold in such a way that the truth is more sacred, that the truth is honored and cared for, and untruths and a lack of facts and lies, outright dishonesty, is not embraced in the way that it is. So that's number one. And number two, we all have our own personal truth as related to who we are, heart, mind, body, and soul. We all have our own truth as related to our own experiences, our own unfolding of our life and our experiences. And that is okay too. And it's great, and I'm encouraging all of us to honor and embrace our own truth, the good and the painful. So for me, my truth is David Lee Roth Van Halen and not Sammy Hagar Van Halen. That's my truth. That's the Van Halen that I grew up with. That's the Van Halen that my best friend growing up introduced me to. And that's the Van Halen that I will only listen to now. But that's my truth. Perhaps for you, it's the Sammy Hagar Van Halen. Perhaps for you, it's not even Van Halen at all. And your truth in terms of what you love is different. And that's okay too. So, my friends, as you go forward, as we all go forward on our journey, asking what is truth? What is truth in a fact-based, reality in our community, our society, the world around us, well, let's not let cognitive dissonance or confirmation biases or flat out dishonesties or falsehoods be the norm in what is truth. And as far as all of us, we all have our own truth, and it is our truth to be spoken if we deem necessary, or to just be embraced by us. But either way, what is truth? Well, I hope your truth is something that you do know and that you do love and that you do care for. So, my friends, I do wish you peace and love on your journey going forward, and thanks be to God, and amen. Thank you again for stopping by the channel and checking out today's video. I wish you peace and love on your journey going forward. And, you know, I recorded a bunch of messages. I'm going to end the video on this. Recorded a bunch of messages a few weeks ago because I was feeling inspired and moved. The Spirit moved me, and I had old messages ready to go, and I had new messages that came to me divinely, and I appreciate that. So, you know, I had some time, and I was feeling good, and I banged out a bunch of messages to drop during November and December. But when I did it, it didn't click in my brain that it was during the holiday season. And I'm a big proponent of letting all of us know that the holiday season is really tough for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. So if you're one of those people who are finding the holiday seasons challenging, my love and my peace and prayers to you. And I hope you're taking the time to care for yourself and know that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be able to feel the joy that others feel around you. And maybe you pivot to whatever brings you comfort in this time. And for anyone else that maybe loves and cares and revels in the holidays, remember that it's not easy for other people. So maybe we're more empathetic and mindful of that in our journey going forward. So either way, thanks for stopping by the channel. Thanks for checking out today's video. I wish you peace and love on your journey.